For a long time, the story of ancient Britain seemed almost stable. The great stones rose on the plain. Farming villages spread across the land. Monuments expanded, graves accumulated, and generation after generation appeared to belong to the same world. Then, genetics opened the graves. And the result was not a subtle correction. It was a rupture. The people living in Britain before roughly 2450 BC were not simply joined by newcomers. They were, to a staggering extent, replaced. Within only a few centuries, more than 90% of the ancestry in Britain appears to have changed. Not the culture alone. Not just pottery, burial customs, or new tools. The people themselves. That is the unsettling part. Because the timing collides with one of the most iconic landscapes in human prehistory. Stonehenge was already standing. Its builders had shaped the ritual heart of Neolithic Britain. Their descendants should have remained part of the island's story. Instead, when researchers looked into the DNA of later burials, they found something else entirely. A population carrying deep ancestry from the Eurasian steppe had appeared in Britain with extraordinary speed, leaving behind almost none of the earlier genetic world. So the question is no longer whether Britain changed. It is how such a change happened at all. How does an island build one civilization, bury its dead, raise its stones to the sky, and then in genetic terms almost vanish? Before that rupture, Britain belonged to a very different human landscape. Its inhabitants were the descendants of Neolithic farmers, whose deeper origins lay far to the southeast in Anatolia, in what is now Turkey. Over generations, those farming populations had moved across continental Europe and eventually into Britain, carrying with them domesticated animals, cultivated grain, and a new way of organizing life around land, season, and monument. They were not steppe herders. They did not yet carry the ancestry that would later dominate much of Britain. In genetic terms, the earlier population was remarkably consistent. Across dozens of sampled individuals from Neolithic Britain, the gene pool remained broadly stable before about 2500 BC, with almost no significant trace of steppe ancestry. That older world had its own lineages, its own faces, its own continuity. Male lines were dominated by haplogroups, such as I2A and G2A inherited from earlier farmers, and local hunter-gatherer ancestry. In appearance, these people may often have had darker skin, darker hair, and darker eyes than the populations that came after them. And for a long time, archaeologists looking at material culture could imagine continuity with adaptation. New objects could move without entire peoples moving. Ideas could spread. Pottery styles could travel farther than bloodlines. That model once seemed plausible. Then the Bell Beaker horizon arrived in Britain, bringing its strange, elegant pottery, its metalworking, its individual burials, and something far more consequential hidden beneath all of it. Not just a new culture, a new population. At first, Bell Beaker Britain did not announce itself through a single battlefield or a dramatic destruction layer. It appeared more quietly than that. A different shape of pottery begins to enter the archaeological record. Distinctive and unmistakable, with its bell-like profile and fine decoration. Alongside it come new burial customs. Instead of collective tombs tied to older Neolithic traditions, more individuals are laid to rest alone, often with grave goods placed beside them. Archers' equipment, metal objects, signs of a social world being rearranged. On the surface, this could still be read as contact, exchange, influence from across the channel. But the pattern kept widening. Burial after burial, site after site, the old Neolithic signature seemed to recede. What emerged in its place was not just a new set of objects, but a new human presence, one that looked connected to Bell Beaker communities already known from continental Europe. The shift was too consistent to dismiss as fashion, too abrupt to explain as gradual blending. And Britain was not the same everywhere. Across Europe, Bell Beaker culture behaved differently in different regions. In some places, the pottery spread farther than the people. In others, the movement of ancestry was limited. But Britain was beginning to look exceptional. The island that had once seemed archaeologically continuous now appeared to be the scene of one of the most dramatic demographic turnovers ever detected in prehistoric Europe. What looked at first like a change in ritual was becoming something much harder to ignore. A change in who was being buried at all. The real break in the story came when archaeology was no longer working alone. Ancient DNA changed the scale of the question. In 2018, a major genomic study examined hundreds of prehistoric individuals across Europe, including a large set from Britain, spanning roughly 6,000 to 3,000 years ago. What it revealed was not a slow drift in ancestry, but a sharp discontinuity. Before the Bell Beaker horizon, sampled individuals in Britain showed almost no steppe ancestry. After it, that ancestry was suddenly everywhere. The contrast was startling. Later individuals associated with the Beaker period in Britain carried genetic profiles closely related to populations on the continent that already possessed substantial steppe ancestry. In many cases, roughly half of their ancestry traced back to that eastern source, ultimately linked to movements that had spread across Europe centuries earlier. And the replacement was not minor. Models based on the available data suggested that over 90% of Britain's earlier Neolithic gene pool disappeared within a relatively short period, perhaps only a few hundred years, perhaps even less in some regions. Then, newer research sharpened the picture again. The migrants who transformed Britain do not appear to have come directly from Iberia, even if Bell Beaker pottery may have deeper cultural roots there. Instead, the evidence points toward the Lower Rhine-Meuse region around parts of the present-day Netherlands, Belgium, and Western Germany. That matters, because now the pottery, the graves, and the DNA all begin to converge. Not into a story of borrowed customs, but into a story of people crossing the sea and remaking an island. Once that pattern became clear, the story stopped being about Bell Beaker pottery. It became a question of ancestry, kinship, and survival. Because this was not just a case of a few foreign elites arriving and imposing a style. The genetic turnover was too deep for that. In Britain, the Bell Beaker horizon appears tied to a migration large enough to reshape the entire biological foundation of the island. And the most dramatic signal came through the male line. Before the Beaker period, sampled Neolithic males in Britain were dominated by haplogroups like I2A and G2A. After the transition, those lineages almost disappear from the record. In their place, one paternal lineage rises with astonishing force, R1b-M269, especially branches such as R1b-P3, 12, and R1b-L21. In later Western Europe and in Britain and Ireland today, those same lineages would become overwhelmingly common. That kind of shift is difficult to explain without major demographic change. But the women changed too. Mitochondrial DNA shows that this was not simply an invasion of men leaving local maternal ancestry untouched. New female lineages also appear strongly in the record, suggesting movement by families, communities, and entire populations, not only war bands or isolated migrants. Even appearance may have changed with them. The incoming populations likely carried lighter pigmentation on average, including lighter skin eyes and hair traits that would become more familiar in later Britain. So this was no thin cultural layer resting on an ancient base. It was a replacement so extensive that the people who raised Britain's stone monuments were no longer the primary ancestors of the people who lived among them. And yet the DNA, for all its power, does not tell us exactly what it felt like. It can show replacement. It cannot fully show the process. There is no single scene preserved in the earth that explains how Neolithic Britain lost so much of itself. No final battle etched into one hillside. No written account of ships arriving, villages, falling, old bloodlines thinning out generation by generation. What remains is a pattern so extreme that it forces difficult possibilities into view. Some researchers point to technological and social advantage. Bell Beaker groups arrived with metalworking new forms of status display and the bow as a powerful symbol and weapon. Others consider disease and whether populations with steppe-derived ancestry may have carried immunological advantages in a world already vulnerable to epidemic shock. Conflict may have played a role. So may demographic pressure, marriage networks, and inherited inequality that favored one population over another. The truth may be messier than any single explanation, because the graves do not describe a simple replacement of the living by the dead. They reveal people building families, burying their own, and taking possession not only of land, but of memory. Even Stonehenge did not disappear with its makers. It remained in the landscape reused by those who were not its original builders. That may be the most unsettling detail of all. A new people arrived in Britain and walked among the monuments of the old world as if history itself had changed owners. Once you step back, the scale of the reversal becomes even harder to ignore. For generations, the deep ancestry of Britain was often imagined as layered but broadly continuous, first foragers, then farmers, then later waves of Celts, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, Normans. A sequence of additions. A complicated mosaic, but still a mosaic built on enduring foundations. Ancient DNA has forced a more uncomfortable picture. The foundation itself was reset. The Bell Beaker migration did not erase every trace of what came before. Some ancestry persisted. Some mixing clearly occurred. But the broad result remains extraordinary. The later genetic base of Britain was formed not mainly by the Neolithic communities, who built its great ceremonial landscapes, but by incoming populations tied to continental networks, already shaped by steppe-derived ancestry. That means one of the most iconic episodes in British prehistory must now be read in a different light. The makers of Stonehenge were not simply the direct biological ancestors of the later populations, who inherited the island. In a profound sense, the monument outlived the people who raised it. And the consequences stretch far beyond the Bronze Age. The paternal lineages that surged into Britain during this transformation, especially branches of R1b, would go on to dominate much of Britain and Ireland into the present. Later, migrations mattered. They changed language, power, identity, and politics. But genetically, many of those later arrivals were adding layers onto a population whose deepest post-Neolithic structure had already been set by this earlier upheaval. So the Bell Beaker story is not a side chapter. It is the moment Britain became something else. What vanished in Britain was not memory. It was continuity. The stones remained. The tombs remained. The fields, the paths, the sacred places, all remained visible in the land. But the people who had built that world were within a surprisingly short span of time, no longer its main biological heirs. That is what makes this story so difficult to reduce to pottery styles or migration maps. It is about how the past can survive physically, even as the human line attached to it is broken. Ancient DNA has given that rupture a new kind of clarity. It shows that prehistory was not always a slow, gentle layering of cultures. Sometimes it was sudden. Sometimes it was unequal. Sometimes an island could keep its monuments, its rivers, its horizons, and still become someone else. And yet, the final lesson is not that one people simply replaced another as if human lives were pieces on a board. The graves suggest families' movement, adaptation, loss, inheritance. Real people crossing water. Real people disappearing into the ancestry of those who followed. Real people standing in the shadow of Stonehenge, not knowing they were living through one of the greatest population transformations ancient Europe would ever reveal. So the deepest shock is not only that Britain changed, it is that history kept the stones and buried the scale of the change beneath them.